are you?
Hi, Gail. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you so
I think
much
I have to
for.
wish you Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, and Happy New Year in that order.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year. And I
Thank
hope you're
you.
having a lovely holiday. Well,
I am.
I mean, as a doctor, I'm sure you're not, it's not really a holiday.
No. It is. It is. It certainly is. And this is always a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Doc, I don't even want to waste time because there's just
Yeah, that's just
so much to get through.
there is.
I mean, we had a lovely chat yesterday, and I know that there's been a couple of questions that have come through, and I've just referred everyone back to my previous videos. But if we do have time to get to them, we'll get to them. But I want to start by chatting through, let's start at the beginning and really just again reminding us, just so that we have a flow. We'll start with just COVID, then the prevention, the treatment, and then we'll finish it off with the vaccine. I know you've got some interesting information to share with us that we can really equip ourselves with this knowledge. So I want to start by just understanding, we had a lovely conversation yesterday and you used a great analogy on what COVID is and how it attacks our bodies.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's great, Gail. I think we should basically go back to the beginning so that although COVID's been around for a year, I think everybody's a bit tired of all of it, and we were all up and at full attention at the beginning and everybody was listening, but I think it's always good to have a bit of a reminder. So in order to explain a little bit about COVID, I managed to find something that looks a lot like the virus, which we've all become quite familiar with. So, this is a nice way for you to visualize what the coronavirus looks like. So this is obviously a hugely enlarged form because viral particles are tiny, so that in one drop of seawater, you can have more than 10 million virus particles. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in one drop of seawater. Now, the thing is, those virus particles alone are harmless because you can, they're not really alive on their own. They need to hijack our cells by entering our body and hijacking and entering our cells and then using our genetic material, and that's how they replicate and infect our body. So that's one very important thing for people to realize, and that's now, so in terms of the virus, it basically looks like this. It has a protein shell, okay, and on the outside it has a fatty envelope. And that fatty envelope is its point of weakness. And that's why we wash our hands with soap and water for 20 seconds, because if there's any of these little particles on our hands, which could be, hundreds of thousands of them, or, millions of them rather, you basically deactivate that fatty shell and you destroy the virus and it can't harm you. And that's very important before you touch your eyes, your nose, or your mouth. Because these other little spiky bits, and this is very important now, these little protein spikes, and this is what all the the vaccination information that you're hearing is all targeted around this these spike proteins. So it has this spike protein, and on the inside you have a little piece of genetic material called RNA. So that's what it uses to replicate itself. Now these little spikes are actually a little key on these viral particles, and the lock for these keys to insert into are on these ACE2 receptors, which are quite abundant on the cells that line our upper respiratory tract, so inside our nose, in our mouth, on our eyes, and also in other parts of our body, but this is usually the portal of entry. So basically what happens is if we take these virus particles into our system, these little spike protein are the key. They find the lock and they enter our cells, hijack our cells and replicate, and in the process they can destroy that cell, and then they send off, millions of more virus particles for our immune system to fight. So, I mean, that's basically. And I might actually just quickly skip to vaccines a bit to touch on, while I've got this little ball here. So now this spike protein is basically what all the vaccines are trying to show our body. basically. This spike protein is like the license plate, okay, of this virus, all right? And you have to imagine that your immune system it's our body's traffic police, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens with the vaccine, and this is why vaccines are totally safe. Vaccines are basically getting a small piece of genetic material and inserting it into your body and telling your body that this, to produce a little, spike protein that looks just like this one, okay? Mm-hmm. But it's not the real virus, it's just a replica. And what happens is, once it tells your body, okay, this is the one that we've got to avoid, just like the old drivers on the road, we've got to avoid this one, okay? It tells your body, and then that little injection that you got with that genetic piece of material, your body destroys it. And it also destroys those, it mounts an antibody response, okay? And then it remembers, it creates a memory of this little virus.
What the virus, yes.
So say once you've had your complete course of vaccination, and that's very important, not just one dose, but you complete the course, what happens is when this virus comes along to your system, your immune system has already seen it.
Recognize it, yeah.
And it'll go, hang on a second, no, that's bad, avoid. And it remembers it, and it basically mounts an immune response and gets rid of it, and you don't get sick.
Interesting. That's a very interesting analogy.
Now, in terms of the mutations, okay, the natural history of any virus is that it can mutate over time, okay, because that RNA strand of genetic material is much less stable than DNA. And so it can, get little deletions here or there. And that's what's happened in this strain that's predominant now in the UK and also in South Africa. Now, sometimes the mutations are such that the virus becomes less, virulent or less likely to infect. Unfortunately, this mutation seems to improve the virus's ability to transmit. And that may be through various mechanisms. It may mean that these little spiky, spike proteins are binding even tighter to the cells, and they're making even more copies. So the people that are getting these are having higher viral loads, and we'll talk about that later.
Yes.
And that's, but the worry that the vaccines won't work. I mean, by and large, everybody is quite happy because, there's, the vaccines basically are designed to recognize this plate. The mutation at this stage is like imagining that just a little corner of that L is deleted, just a little corner, but we can still recognize it and your body can still get rid of it. So just wanted to reassure everybody that so far the vaccines they think should be fine against even the mutated strains, but the important thing is that everybody gets vaccinated as soon as possible, because the more chance you have of the virus being around and infecting people, the more chance you're giving for the virus to mutate.
Okay, I hear you.
If you stop the transmission and people aren't getting infected, you're not giving the virus a chance to mutate. So it basically goes back to the basics, which is that behavioural vaccine is the most effective tool we have. And yes.
And that's what I want to chat about. I mean, I know that the vaccine, we only due to receive the vaccine in the second quarter of next year. And I think it is important that we, like you say, the behavioral vaccine, that we get that right, because 3 to 6 months is a long time. There's a lot that can happen within those couple of months. So it's important for us to equip ourselves with knowledge and information on how to protect ourselves, how to prevent, how to treat ourselves. And then, also at a later stage, when the vaccine hits South Africa, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I think we'll touch on the vaccine a bit later. But I want to chat quickly around prevention again, because I know that a lot of people are stressed about how do I keep myself safe now. This new strain is more infectious, it's easier to get it, and obviously there's also the fear. I've had COVID before, so the reality is I can get it again, and how is it going to affect my body the second time around? So it's just now prevention. What do I need to do? I know many people have heard wash your hands, don't touch your face, you know, all those basic sort of measures that we can put in place to protect ourselves. But I know that there's also some interesting information that you have around, you know, reducing the viral load and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, even as you mentioned that South Africa is going to get the vaccine maybe the second quarter of next year. If you think about even for the whole planet, the minute you get a vaccine, it doesn't mean that you're protected. It means you still have to follow the rules of, you know, washing your hands, watching your distance, wearing a mask, and also now watching your ventilation. Because until such time as, you know, the vast majority of the population, probably approaching over 85 to 90%, is vaccinated, we can still actually get the virus. It just, the vaccine prevents a severe infection with the virus.
That's very interesting that you say that, because somebody actually asked, if I get the vaccine, can I get the virus again? And yes, you can. It's just like a flu vaccine, like you mentioned to me yesterday. It's just like getting a flu shot. You can still get flu. It just reduces the severity of.
Yeah, or you can still get colds. And flu vaccine, you know, is changed every year. I mean, they change it looking at what the strains, how the strains change. So, you know, similar thing might happen with the COVID vaccine. We don't know as yet how long the immunity will last. But, I mean, it's a huge logistical exercise to get everybody on the planet immunized in 2 doses. So, you know, the reality is that the basic behavioural vaccine, which is highly effective if people actually use it, is here to stay for a long time. Now, just to explain that a little bit more, I just wanted to show everybody this diagram, which is really, really important to understand, okay? And this this explains transmission and why it is an accelerating pandemic. So basically, you probably heard of this figure called the R-naught, which basically talks about how many people one person with COVID can infect. And they think it's sort of close to between 2 and 3. So in this diagram, which is like a tree, if this one person has COVID, they can infect another 3, and those people can infect another 2 or 3, and then those people can infect another 2. And so there you see how this
one person,
you know, how all these curves, you get this, see how you get this exponentially growing number of people that are infected. Okay, so the only way to stop the pandemic will end when one person,
that person is vaccinated.
One person infects less than one other person, because otherwise you have linear spread. But if there's one person is not infecting, you know, another person, basically the pandemic will stop. All right. And this is the same diagram to remember for one virus particle and for viral load later. That one virus particle makes so many different, replicates and makes so many. So if you can reduce your viral load by wearing a mask and avoiding even one virus particle, you've saved your immune system that many virus particles to fight off. Okay, so this is a really sort of excellent and important diagram to remember. Now, the only way to stop person A from spreading it to these other people is by, breaking that chain of transmission. So that's, washing your hands, watching your distance, so physically distancing yourselves while remaining socially connected, and wearing your masks. Now, the very important thing that has come up of late, which I wanted to cover, is the modes of transmission. So early on, it was all about the droplets. So they were talking about droplet and surface transmission. And you remember early on, I did a video on, how to make up your, disinfectant solutions in spray bottles.
Yes.
And that's still important, but they think surface transmission is, not really a significant form of transmission. Obviously, it's important to make sure the surfaces are clean if somebody in your household has COVID. But the droplet was referring to the big droplets that we expel from our mouths when we cough and sneeze, and that's why there was the cough and sneeze into your elbow, staying home if you're sick, and obviously wearing the mask. But now what they've admitted is that a major mode of spread is aerosols. Now, aerosols is the smaller particles that you release when you even just are breathing, or you talk, or you sing. So the way you've got to think about it is that when somebody's talking, if you want to visualize it, it's like smoke. Okay, so I've just got a little bit of going to any Dettol spray here. So imagine every time somebody's talking, they're releasing this fine spray. Okay? All right. Now, what's going to happen if there are a lot of people talking, and if they're singing or shouting, okay, and all the windows are closed, and there's a lot of people in the room, what's going to happen to these particles? I mean, imagine it's somebody smoking. And imagine it's a really toxic fume. I mean, imagine this is insect spray. I mean, what's going to happen? Basically, it's going to concentrate in that room. The particles are going to concentrate over time and over, you know, the volume, basically.
Yes.
And that, if you think of that room then, that room has an incredibly high viral load. And so how's the best way that we can protect ourselves?
Open the windows, ventilation, open the doors, sit outside.
This is the ideal house, you see, because
the dollhouse.
The dollhouse, the windows have no glass, okay? So the windows should be open. Now, we're lucky in South Africa and New Zealand, we're in the, you know, summer at the moment. So, you know, opening the windows to ventilate is incredibly important because it dilutes all those particles. But even if you open it a little bit, it makes a difference. The other thing is you're going to be wearing a mask, okay? And the mask obviously has to be clean, and we went through all of this before. It has to be well fitted, okay? It has to be well fitted. You've got to keep it on the whole time, but you've also got to wear some eye protection, all right?
Because the particles can go into your eyes as well.
Yeah, because I mean, imagine if that this was like insect spray and it's concentrating in the room. You're like, oh my God, I don't want it to hit my eyes. I mean, this is going to infect you. Okay.
Finally, an excuse for us to wear shades indoors.
yeah, you can have a masquerade party. And actually, the other point of this is that, look, I mean, king and queen up here, they're okay because they're in the same bubble, right? But, you know, Milan and Pocahontas, I'm pretty sure they're not from the same family. So if they were indoors, there is no safe distance. Even if you're in an enclosed room that's not ventilated, even if you're sitting on opposite sides of the room, you can still get infected.
Wow, that's very interesting. Right? So does that, and that goes for public transportation. I mean, we use a lot of public transportation in South Africa. So from minibus taxis to buses to, you know, if their windows are not open, even if the aircon is on. So if the aircon is on, it's the same thing. You have to open the windows. Yeah,
I mean, air conditioning is, you know, you've got to be careful in terms of the direction of the flow. I mean, aircon is not the best. I know in my surgery, I kept the aircon off because I thought, oh, the vent will get, you know, maybe the sort of push their particles further towards me. So you have to really think. I mean, so air filters are good. Extractor fans. So if you're having a party, for example, the terrace is a much better place than inside. So outdoor entertaining is much better than being inside. I mean, obviously, you know, it's best to not entertain. And, you know, maintain a bit distance, but and keep your masks on unless you are actually eating. But the other thing that people can get are these carbon dioxide sensors, where you can sense exactly how much carbon dioxide. And I think if the level is, you know, less than 800, it's okay. But if it's getting more than 1,000, then you've got to open the windows and ventilate.
Oh, again, that's interesting. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so carbon dioxide sensors are something that, I mean, I've seen them on Amazon. They're not that expensive, but that's something that's, you know, going to become probably more prevalent. But even simple things like having your kitchen extractor fan on, having your bathroom extractor fan on, having the bathroom window open. If somebody's to use the toilet in your house, make sure that they flush with the lid down because you can have a plume.
With the lid down?
Yes, that's very important as well.
Wow.
So these are all ventilation risk mitigation strategies, which is why I left this little doll's house here to remind myself.
And that's very interesting because, I mean, we are now, yes, we are in level 3 lockdown again in South Africa. But I'm sure, you know, leading up to New Year's Eve and New Year's, people will have a friend or two or a family member or whatever the case might be. And I think it's very important to equip ourselves with that knowledge to know if you let people into your home, whether it's one person or two people or family or not family, but to know what to do when you allow people into your space.
And everybody should speak quietly, like inside voices. And there shouldn't be shouting or singing. You know, if you're going to have a singing get together, it's got to be on Zoom, because, you know, there were cases in a church where, you know, a choir practice, one person infected the whole, you know, congregation, basically. So
from singing because...
Yeah, because greater volume, more smoke.
Okay.
Okay, so more particles.
Maybe just WhatsApp each other when we're in the room together, no talking. Keep the mask on.
Like, look, I think the thing to celebrate this New Year's is that there is a lot of hope. I think what people don't understand is that there was never a guarantee that they would get a vaccine. And to get so many at such high efficacies, I mean, these are vaccines that are over 90% effective. They are safe, and they've been produced in under a year. I mean, it's as remarkable as man landing on the moon. Just, you know, half an hour ago, I saw the brilliant news that the UK has approved the Oxford vaccine. And,
oh, wow.
You know, that's fantastic, because so far the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine that have already been put into production, and in the US, they've already vaccinated 1.9 million people. And so far, the CDC has reported only 353 adverse reactions, and most of them were just what was expected. Only 4 people were hospitalized, and nobody has
died.
it
wasn't it wasn't severe.
No, it wasn't severe. And I mean, if you're going to vaccinate, you know, a huge number of people,
2 million people.
You're going to see side effects. I mean, at the moment, they're telling anybody who has a history of anaphylactic reactions to food or medicines, you know, or any component of the vaccine, to avoid it. But, you know, there are over 60 vaccine candidates, and this Oxford vaccine being approved is huge, because it doesn't need to be frozen. It's not an mRNA vaccine.
I think there's a lot of fear around the vaccine, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of, you know, because I mean, when I was a young child, and even now, my kids are young, so they've been vaccinated as children. So I wasn't there when the vaccine for polio was being approved or was first tested or came out or whatever. I'm at a place now where I trust the vaccine for my kids because it's been around for so many years, and that's what we do. You take your child for immunization, and now this vaccine is being sort of approved, and we're going through all you know, the phases of us getting comfortable with it. So I think there's a lot of uncomfortability with this vaccine in particular, and I hope that, you know, we all get to a place where we're comfortable and understand that in order to stop the spread of COVID-19, that a majority of people would need to get vaccinated eventually. I just hope that we all get comfortable with it, because
they're obviously starting off with, you know, the most vulnerable people, you know, healthcare workers. And, you know, I mean, people have to understand that it's really important that they follow the rules. I mean, because, look, healthcare workers are, you know, are struggling. I mean, they're drowning. They've been going on non-stop, you know, on empty tanks, trying to save people. But, you know, people think that, you know, if I get sick, the biggest issue is I won't get a bed in hospital. It's not the physical bed itself. It's the healthcare worker that looks after that patient. And that's what's, you know, the most precious resource, and it's irreplaceable. And unfortunately, hospitals around the world are getting overwhelmed. So what happens, and why, you know, South Africa has gone into another, you know, strict lockdown with curfews, is because they have to preserve that healthcare system from collapsing. Because if the healthcare system collapses, even if you or I get a relatively, you know, mild to moderate case that we need to have some treatment, imagine suddenly you can't get treatment, then you can have a very poor outcome. So it's really important. And also those same healthcare workers are the ones that are going to be working round the clock for the next few years vaccinating everybody. because it is, you know, it does require somebody with training and understanding to be able to do it. So vaccination is safe, vaccination is essential, and you know, by the time South Africa gets it, you know, you would have seen already so many people having had it already. You know, we've
yeah, there will be some comfort level, yes. And,
yeah.
and on that note, you know, I just want to give a big shout out to, you know, our healthcare workers who are, you know, really putting in the hours and putting their lives on the line, you know, for us to be able to be comfortable and know that if we need to, that there is, you know, someone who can take care of us and assist us if we need information. So I want to then quickly chat around. I mean, I think people know what to do when it comes to prevention. People know what to do, wash your hands, social distance, and all that. There is a lot of anxiety with new cases and people wanting to just touch base again on how to treat COVID at home, because not all cases would need hospitalization. I didn't need hospitalization. When I tested positive, I thought I had shortness of breath. So I went to a hospital and like we mentioned, you know, a healthcare worker met me at the door and said to me, "You're having a panic attack. Okay, it's not shortness of breath. So go home, breathe and relax and treat COVID at home." So I think there's a lot of the anxiety when you test positive, and then also just equipping ourselves with knowledge and information on how to treat ourselves at home.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's an excellent point. And I've just got another diagram which I want to show people. I mean, we've been really blessed in New Zealand. We've got amazing scientific communication. And so there's this lovely duo, which is a microbiologist, Dr. Susie Wiles, and a cartoonist, Toby Morris. And they've come up with amazing images that have helped us understand, New Zealanders understand. Now, this is an amazing diagram, which is the COVID infection triangle. Okay. Now you have the virus, okay, on one corner. You have the host, which is, you know, you or me, or the person getting infected, and then you have the environment. So, like I said, where you're putting yourself, where you're exposing yourself. Now, like you said, people are feeling very sort of panicked and anxious and thinking, you know, 2020, what is that about? Nothing is in my control. Well, there's always something in your control, and that is your behavior. And your behavior will can reduce your risk and your viral load by avoiding risky environments. So the risky environments to avoid are, you know, like I said, crowded locations that are poorly ventilated, where there's a lot of people speaking, you know, loud for prolonged durations of time, and they're not wearing masks. Okay, so we can mitigate our risks by avoiding, you know, and places where we don't know people and the people outside our bubble. Now, the host factors. Now, this is really, really, really important, and I would say the most important thing for everybody to work on now. And what I'm talking about building your fortress. Okay, that's our own personal health and our immune system, which is our #1 defense in fighting this infection. And so, you know, you and I got to know each other because of my viral video.
Yes.
I can no longer remember every language I've got it in, so I had to actually.
We need to actually do some languages locally, you know, and we need to get in touch and do some, you know, translate it so that we can share more of the information, you know, in some of our own languages here in South Africa.
Well, I mean, you know, it's been phenomenal, Gail. I mean, on June 14th, I uploaded this video, 18-minute video, to just give. It was my disaster management plan to protect my family, and also I thought people who might not have access to a doctor, couldn't access a test or hospital level care, and this was my best shot at getting them to survive. And you know what the incredible news is? I got, you know, been overwhelmed globally with feedback on how this these simple tips has, you know, empowered people to basically improve themselves. And there's very good science behind what I've done, and now it's in 13 additional languages with more on the way, including, you know, French, Portuguese, Spanish, Russian, Arabic.
Wow, we need to add Xhosa, Zulu, Setswana, Afrikaans.
Yeah,
all of
you
those.
know, I've grown technologically, my knowledge has expanded, and I've got a huge global family now. So please watch this if you haven't. And
I've got it on my page. I've
Yeah, and it's
posted
on
it, and I know
my
you've also posted it. Yeah.
IGTV.
Mm.
Okay, so this is really important. And also I have another offer for the mental health side. I've made a 37-minute video where I give my tips on breaking down anxiety and depression and
I
building
love
mental
that.
resilience.
I love that,
So
because I think with
that's also
anxiety,
very
one of
important.
the things that helped me was also your video on box breathing, and just
Yeah.
really taking control of our breathing when you experience the anxiety, be it just because of, you know, the madness that we find ourselves in the world, or if you test positive, because oftentimes it's not shortness of breath, it is, you know, anxiety building up.
Yeah.
And that video also on box breathing has helped me a lot.
Yeah, so that I've kept it as a separate video, but that's also part of that 37-minute video. But getting back to our immunity, which is our number one defense, you know, because our routines are all disrupted and people's mood is feeling a bit off, it's very easy to, you know, fall into a, you know, a pattern where you basically have no pattern, and that's very bad for our immunity. So the basics of our immunity is to eat well, and, you know, that's whole foods, real foods, you know, that are low in, you know, not your ultra processed foods that come out of a packet. You know, they're foods that are as natural as possible, preferably, you know, prepared at home, and mainly, you know, your fresh vegetables and fruit of all colors of the rainbow. Okay, because they are your natural vitamins and minerals, and your natural antioxidants that are important for your immunity. So you've got to eat well, you've got to sleep well. So you've got to have a good routine, and, you know, preferably try and get 8 hours of sleep a night if you can.
Sure.
Yeah, if you can. And apart from that, it's important that we exercise. All right, and exercise, you know, it doesn't have to be anything massive, running around block, even, you know, doing a 20-minute workout at home, you know,
Or taking a walk, or just being active.
Yeah, it's important. It's very important for our immunity and for our mood, because that releases natural endorphins. It's important that we love more. So loving more means remaining connected, because loneliness is very bad for our immunity.
Yes, absolutely.
And, you know, I mean, like, it's easy to focus on all the negatives, but one of the biggest positives of the pandemic hitting at this time is look at the technological advances. You know, we could switch to online school virtually overnight, online consultations, and, you know, we can remain connected in quite a meaningful way online. I mean, you and I have remained connected.
Yes, yes.
One meet in person. So, and the combination of doing all of these, of eating and sleeping well, of loving more and moving more, is that you will stress less. And being calm is one of the number one things for your immunity, because when you are stressed, you're in a constant state of fight or flight. And that's really bad for your immunity. And as I told you before, we need to reserve that fighting spirit for when we actually get sick.
Yeah,
you know,
very true.
So that's immunity. And the other thing I spoke about, so that's your base immunity that you've got to keep primed. Now, in terms of if you do get sick, now if you get any sort of virus, you can't say, oh, I think it's just a cold, it's not COVID. Assume you've got COVID and self-isolate straight away. You've got a runny nose, you've got sore throat, wear a mask. It's a, you know, even if you've got young kids at home and you're worried that they've got COVID, or you've proven and you're like, oh, they're, you know, or you're the mother and the children, you still have to look after the children. The mask is an incredibly good tool. Okay, you know, if both people, you know, you and the other person, if one person's infected, you go from a 90% chance of transmission to a, you know, 1.5% chance. And as we said, not only are you preventing, you know, transmission, you're also reducing the viral load if you do have to get it. So that's one big thing that happened in countries that started mandatory mass masking, is they saw a drop in rates of hospitalization, and they had much more asymptomatic cases because people were getting a much lower viral load. So this mask is almost like a vaccine in itself. So that's very important. So so you're going to be so in terms of immunity, if you do get infected, as I said, you're going to, with any infection, you're going to self-isolate, you're going to try and get tested. and straight away you're going to start boosting your immune system. So you're going to start.
Do you not boost your immune system before you take?
You don't have to. I mean, if you're having a healthy diet, I would say vitamin D is important, particularly if you've got dark skin and you're in winter, because you know, I mean, the dietary sources of vitamin D are virtually non-existent. You know, I mean, unless you live in countries where they have vitamin D fortified cereals and milks. I know in countries like India they don't really, and almost universal rates of vitamin D deficiency. People who had COVID, severe COVID, who had low vitamin D levels had poorer outcomes. So vitamin D, make sure your vitamin D status is not deficient, that you are
and also I think we had this chat earlier when we had our conversation, was that for us who have more melanin, your skin doesn't necessarily absorb vitamin D from the sun, so it is advisable to take a vitamin D supplement.
And if you're wearing sunscreen, by the way, it doesn't absorb the UVB, so you can't protect your skin and make vitamin D at the same time. So yes, you do need to you know, speak to your doctor and just take a supplement. So that's the one thing I would definitely make sure that you're taking. But apart from that, if you have a healthy diet, you know, you don't need to be popping vitamins every day. You know, but at the first sign of getting sick, yes, I would start taking your vitamin C, your zinc, and your vitamin D straight away. So, so that's immunity, and that's your number one port of defense. Now, you know, another really good way to sort of calm yourselves down and try and prepare yourselves apart from immunity is, you know, if you watch my video, is make yourself a little kit. So it was quite cool. A pharmacy here liked my video so much they started selling these kits, which had everything that I needed. And somebody posted on my social media that they've started making kits for their family.
That's really good. And that's really cool.
Yeah, when you get sick, you don't have the energy to run around. So this was great, I thought. So what they had in the kit was they had some masks, because you'll need masks, you know, and, you know, you'll need to dispose of them in a plastic lined bin. They had their multivitamin with the vitamin C, zinc, and vitamin D ready to go. They had their little betadine concentrate in there. You know, your Vicks, you know, for your steam inhalation.
And the betadine solution is for the mouth rinsing and also for the droplets in the nose to reduce the viral load.
So I would say that, and this is something, a tip that I would recommend to, you know, particularly in South Africa and in India, is get some saline made into a little dropper bottle, because the ones you buy over the counter, you can't open the lid. And, you know, just ask the pharmacist to get you some saline, and then you get this little dropper bottle, which, like in my video shows, you can actually take off the lid. And then you can get the betadine and you can put a few drops of betadine. And this is just the betadine sore throat concentrate, gargle concentrate. You don't have to put the betadine, but betadine has been shown to actually be able to, you know, deactivate virus in the nose. So what I would do is, whenever I would go out, and this is what doctors are doing, you know, when they come back from work, to try and reduce the viral load, just put a few drops in each nostril. I would gargle with this, you know, betadine. You could use a dental antiseptic, and I would also...
Or salt water.
Yeah, or salt water. And I would also brush my tongue, because again, the tongue contains a lot of the cells with the ACE2 receptors. And so you want to physically dislodge and dilute as many of the viral particles which you may have inadvertently inhaled, even if you were, you know, wearing your well-fitted mask. So these are just simple things to, you know, reduce viral load. So yeah, and so they've got a couple of balloons. And,
yes, the balloons for blowing, the straw.
Yeah, so basically, number one step in my video was, you know, priming and boosting your immunity. Number two, I talked about reduction in viral load. So as I explained, you know, even if you knock off one particle, you've saved your immune system that many more virus particles to fight off. So, you know, we can wait till the evidence comes out, but it's common sense. You know, it's just common sense. And, you know, these are things that we've been doing since time immemorial. You know, rinsing your mouth with warm, salty water, you know, gargling with warm, salty water does help reduce your viral load, and will, you know, mean that you will recover faster. The other thing is, you know, if you've got any, you nasal secretions, not only does it drip forwards, it drips backwards and causes a tickle in your throat. And so it's very important to dry up your nose. So something like a nasal decongestant, like an Otrivin nasal spray, or even a phenylephrine or a Sudafed tablets, they help dry up your nose. And again, that will help prevent it. And also, the steam inhalation I described. So that was the second point, and I show how to do nasal rinsing,
yes.
making up the
And that video was very, very helpful. I want to encourage everyone to, it's very difficult because it's so informative, and it is like 18 minutes long. So if you have tested positive for COVID, just go through my timeline. I tested positive, I think, in August, if I'm not, or July. So just my timeline is on the IGTV. I posted the video where Dr. Sandhya just talks through, managing COVID at home, everything from blowing into balloons to checking your what is it? Your oxygen levels, your blood oxygen levels.
That's the most important piece of equipment, which I haven't shown you. That's also in that kit. Is everybody needs to have a SATS monitor, because basically, when you get COVID, or the people that were getting bad outcome it was causing a silent hypoxia. So, it was infecting your lungs. The virus particles were replicating, and people were getting massively reduced lung function, oxygen saturation, but it was silent because it wasn't through the usual means. So they were turning up to hospital and their saturations were really low, yet they were still basically talking on their phones, and doctors were shocked, and that's why they went down rapidly. But if you have a little SATS monitor at home, because this hypoxia can be asymptomatic, and the way to use it, it's simple. It's just got a little light. You've got to make sure you don't have nail polish. You just put your finger all the way in, doesn't really matter which finger, and it basically shines a light, and then it, takes a reading of, and obviously I'm putting out a lot of hot air at the moment because my SATs are reading at 100%. So this is very important because it's the only way to guarantee that your lungs are safe.
Yeah, I got that. I got mine, I think, from Dischem for 500 Rand. So it is available.
Some people's phone models have oxygen saturation.
Wow.
It might not be as effective, but it's better than nothing.
And it was very helpful. Like whenever I was panicking and thinking I can't breathe or I'm not getting enough air, I would check my blood oxygen level, and it would be, my saturation, and it would be at 98% or 99%, and I would relax. And as soon as it gets to 97, I'll start blowing into my balloon again or into my straw, that it increases again. And I think it helps calm you down to know that, yes, you might have tested positive, or you might feel like you're struggling to breathe, but at least you don't need hospitalization from an oxygen perspective.
Too. I mean, where they're looking at the UK's in, I think they had 51,000 new cases in a day. And, this is useful information. Now, the normal range is between 95 and 100, and I go through that in my video. But you've got to understand is that some people may have chronic conditions, and that's the other thing in terms of your immunity. If you have any chronic conditions, make sure that you stay on top of them. And also you avoid smoking and alcohol. And
I remember yesterday you mentioned binge drinking is quite bad for COVID.
It's very bad. I mean, alcohol, smoking, all of these things are, they're toxins that you're putting into your body and reducing your body's natural immunity. So if you want to work on something now, work on that. But as I said, the normal range is 95 to 100, but people who have a chronic condition, they may normally saturate at 93, and that might be okay for them. But any drop in that baseline, if you're fighting an infection, is a red flag for you to get help, especially if it's associated with shortness of breath. Now, in the video, I go through the third step. I go through the most important is the breathing exercises, because proactively fighting that infection and forcing those virus particles out of your lung bases and keeping them aerated and not allowing them to collapse down is essential to make sure that you, optimize your outcome. And basically, blowing the balloon simulates what a ventilator does. It's forced exhalation against resistance.
Right.
And that's a very good way to keep your airways open. So I don't know if you would have ever had an operation before, you would have seen these. Yeah, so if you get an operation, this is called incentive spirometry. And what the physios get you to do, you know, after you've had an operation to make sure your lungs are working well, is they try and get you to get these balls up in the air.
The way up.
Now, I bought one after my video just to prove a point. I could barely do this. By the way, the only
the balloon's also hard. The balloon is also hard.
But this is even harder. And the only way you can get these balls up is by forcefully exhaling first, and then because these balls can only go up if you inhale. Okay, so I'm going to try it now and I'm going to show you.
Okay.
Okay. So if I just breathe in, I'll show you. I'm not going to have much luck. Okay. Okay, that's not my. That's me breathing in really hard. Now I'm going to do something else. I'm going to breathe out hard first.
Wow.
Okay, now I could not, if I just did this. I just cannot do it.
Out. Oh.
Okay.
Right.
So
that's what the balloon does when you blow.
Forcefully blowing out against an incentive. And a more gentler form was blowing bubbles into the glass of water, because it's still resistance. And if I was to just...
I did that a lot. I let my kids do that when we tested positive. I was like, here's a straw, here's a cup, just blow into it, and you know, and it's fun. They love it.
You know, I can't, just now when I blew out for you, I couldn't maintain that. But I could do this for hours. Not hours, but a long time.
But yeah, we did that. We did that sitting on the couch and watching TV. Like, here's your straw, here's your straw. And even the balloons were fun for the kids. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, if you're infected, just be careful in terms of the balloon, that you're doing it in an isolated area and you're not then sharing your deflated balloon aerosol with everybody.
Oh, no, of course, yes.
And make sure your balloon is not got powder inside it. That was another point people brought up, because you don't want to.
And that it's not an old balloon. You need to do it into a new balloon. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, and it really is an incredibly useful tool. And, you know, I've had people post on my YouTube video that, doctor, you saved my life. I had COVID, I was struggling with my breathing, and it's a miracle.
It made a massive difference. It made I mean, with the SATs, I could literally see a difference, you know, in percentage from feeling like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm struggling to breathe, let me blow into a balloon, or let me blow into a straw, and then suddenly my SATs are a bit higher. So I definitely can, and I think also just the comfort of knowing that my lungs are fine and I don't need hospitalization. And that in itself reduces.
Checking your saturation. Afterwards. You check your oxygen saturation.
You check it.
And you do that every day, you know, twice a day for the first 14 days of the illness. Now, people were asking, I saw there were a few questions. I mean, you know, do I have to keep on testing negative, you know, like to say that I'm free of the virus? Generally, you're most infectious early, or just before you come out, you know, come down with symptoms. And that's why it's important for everybody to wear a mask, because, you know, because of this asymptomatic infections and pre-symptomatic spread. So you could be infecting other people and you don't know. So the mask protects you, the mask protects me, the mask protects all of us, you know. So, you know, and that was one of the strengths of the New Zealand response, is that the government got up and basically said, it wasn't stay home and look after yourself. It was protect each other.
Yes. And we have the same sentiment here. And I think, you know, the more we adhere to it, you know, the more beneficial it will be for all of us. I want to just touch on a few questions that came through. Someone was asking about mask wearing and the carbon dioxide that we are inhaling. Is it dangerous for our lungs? Is it something to be concerned about? Because some people spend hours wearing a mask. Is that a concern?
No. I mean, my husband's a cardiothoracic surgeon, and he does operations that go for hours and hours. And the person that you don't want fainting is your surgeon who's operating on you. And surgeons have been wearing masks since time immemorial, and because, you know, they don't want to, you don't want the surgeons, breath or any of their particles going into your body cavity, and, you know, affecting the sterility of the field. So no, masks are totally safe. The best masks are 3 layers, a breathable fabric, but it's very important that you don't get slack, that you actually wash the mask in hot wash it. You wear it only once, and if it's a disposable mask, you dispose of it you know. And
Immediately.
there's the masks that come, they have a waterproof layer on the outside. Wear it the correct
Yes.
way, and it has a wire which molds to your
Yes.
nose. Mold it down. And, you know, people complain of their glasses fogging up. You can just rinse your glasses in a bit of soapy water, and that will make a film on the glasses and it won't fog up.
Oh,
And sorry,
wow.
the last thing on my video that I went through was the prone positioning, that we have to sleep on our stomach if we are infected,
Yes.
because, you know, sleeping on your back means that your lungs can get compressed, and that's what they do in the hospital. So I show how to do that. And if you're pregnant, you can use a triangle-shaped, you know, pillow and do that comfortably.
Please watch the video that we've posted before. And then I want to chat quickly about, I mean, there's a lot of home remedies that are going around, people making their own stuff at home. And I think whatever makes you comfortable, obviously don't do anything that is not safe, you know, and that would put you at risk. But there's people talking about mixing brown sugar with orange to help bring back your sense of taste and smell. There's just so many things, and I think the basics are important. And whatever else that you want to add on, like ginger tea with cayenne pepper and lemon, or whatever the case might be, if that makes you more comfortable, and if the hot beverages make you feel better, and you know, then do that, as long as the basics are taken care of.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what you just touched on there was taste and smell retraining. And that's, you know, I think that's a good idea for people who, I mean, again, this is a new virus, and people have to understand that, you know, we're only still learning of what the effects, and the effects are not just, I get the virus and I get better, because, you know, there are, or I die. There are, you know, a large proportion of people, they think around 10%, but it may be a lot more, that have long COVID, which symptoms last, you know, for more than 3 weeks or months.
I lost my sense of taste and smell for almost 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, you know, and so this smell retraining, I mean, again, it's common sense. They think that, you know, the virus, that shouldn't be a permanent damage, because it's not actually invading the nerve cells, but the support cells. So you can try and retrain by, you know, smelling, you know, pungent odors or spices, and just reminding your sense of smell, same with the taste. So that's, I suppose, where people are putting, you know, the sweet and the sour and stuff, because otherwise for your immune system, you want to avoid sugary drinks. So just clarify those two
Rather
things.
not.
Yeah. So, but, you know, home remedies and things that make you feel comfortable are absolutely fine.
And I think it's been very helpful. Just, you know, there's been a lot of questions, and then I want to touch quickly. I mean, there's a couple of questions coming through. I just switched the comments back on because a lot of people had questions. And then, you know, the issue of young kids. I mean, young kids tend to handle COVID relatively okay. And it's not a big, I mean, my kids, when we had COVID, we couldn't isolate really. I mean, when my husband and I found out that we both had COVID, we just carried on as per normal, and we just stayed indoors, and, you know, all our food was delivered at the door, and, you know, we weren't in contact with anybody, but the kids managed relatively okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the worst affected groups are, you know, your elderly or those with chronic conditions. I mean, by God's grace and fortunately, you know, children's immune systems seem to fight it off, and, you know, they're still trying to think why that is. It could be also things like the concentration and the number of ACE2 receptors that the kids have is not as much as the adults do. Like I explained, it's the ACE2 receptors. So, you know, but, you know, there are adverse outcomes for children where they can get these, you know, delayed multi-system inflammatory disorders. And so, you know, you have to keep an eye out, and the base rules remain that you need to follow all the precautions to avoid COVID at any cost, and particularly when there's so much hope on the horizon. We've got vaccines, you know, which we didn't have when we last spoke. And, you know, heard fantastic news that the Oxford vaccine has been approved. So, and these are highly efficacious vaccines. I mean, some of the vaccines, like the flu one, is only around, you know, 40 to 60% effective, I read, whereas these are over 90% effective and incredibly safe. So the important thing is keep following the precautions of washing your hands before touching your eyes, your nose, your mouth, watching your distance, but remembering that if you're in an enclosed room with non-family members, there is no safe distance, and you must wear a well-fitted mask, that you need to watch your ventilation carefully.
Yes. Yes.
And that you need to get vaccinated as soon as it's offered to you, and you need to complete that vaccination program and then repeat and follow those same precautions, those same behavioural ones until such time when we don't have to anymore. And it will happen. It will happen.
Yes. And I just want to, sorry, I see a couple of questions coming through, people asking, how do I treat COVID when I'm asthmatic? My husband was asthmatic and it was a big concern, but he seems to have managed through COVID. So I think it's, you know,
it's just like what I said, Gail. It's any chronic condition, stay on top of it. So if you've got asthma, make sure that you're taking your preventer puffer regularly. You know, asthmatics haven't been shown to have any worse outcome. Same with if you're a diabetic, make sure that your sugars are well controlled, that you're maintaining contact with your family physician, and you're taking your regular medications, because that is important for your immunity. Even if you've got a condition which, you know, means that you have a suppressed immune system, it's still important for you to take that medication and control your chronic diseases. So, you know, look after yourselves and look after your immunity, because it's your #1 defense. It's your fortress.
Vitamin D and zinc are safe for kids. I see someone is asking, there are kiddie-friendly ones that you can drop into their food, droplets. You can get it at any chemist. Pregnant women, yes, you can breastfeed. Keep your masks on while you're breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is always important. It's always advisable to breastfeed your babies. And then someone asked, oh, you said about the glasses, the fogging. Someone missed that. So you just wash it in soapy water.
In some soapy water. Yeah, and then dry it off, and that will just keep a film, and you know, and make sure that your nose has a good seal, because it's just the air coming out and fogging up your glasses. But I think
this
and the other thing is, I mean, I think Gail, the biggest thing and what you touched on is to manage anxiety, empower yourself with knowledge. I mean, one of the biggest things I've been doing since the beginning of the pandemic is taking all of those articles and trying to decode them. And give the information in bite-sized pieces for people to understand how to apply it to their daily living. So, I mean, you're welcome to follow me on my public Facebook page or my Instagram. And, you know, I try and keep people, and that, you know, has been a way that I've managed my own anxiety. And, you know, because basically, you know, ignorance is not blissful at all. I mean, it increases your anxiety, and it could mean that you could be responsible for infecting or killing somebody else by giving them the virus inadvertently. So it's each individual's responsibility to educate themselves, to understand the rules and to follow them.
Absolutely.
So I think, you know, knowledge is power, and we've got a lot to be hopeful for, and we just have to hang in there. But it's actually quite a dangerous time in the pandemic, because we have
all of us are tired.
Everybody's tired, but you know, we've got these strains which are even more highly transmissible, so we've got to follow the rules even more carefully. You know?
I'm worried that we're going to get cut off, because I think we've reached our hour, and I think it's just I'm going to post the video for people to watch. I know you're going to post the video as well and share. Please follow Dr. Sandhya Ramanathan on her Instagram. She's got some amazing information and stuff to empower us. And I see a lot of questions coming through. We've touched on most of them. You can also watch the older videos. And if
actually,
there's anything,
if you read through most of my past posts, I probably answer a lot of those questions in all of those past posts. And I don't have thousands. I think I've only got about 250 posts.
Yeah. I know. Yes. Everyone asking about babies and steaming, all that information we touched on in the previous live we did. Dr. Sandhya touches on it in the video. Please just, refer back to those videos, because we are going to get cut off. Dr. Sandhya, thank you so much. I know it's like 10 p.m. in Auckland.
That's all right. It's a pleasure. And, you know, Happy New Year.
Thank you. And to you.
And, you know, stay safe.